Well, welcome everybody to the first ever Citus release party. And this is for Citus 11.0, which just released about 1.5 weeks ago. I'm Claire Giordano. I work on the open source project here at Microsoft, and I'm joined today. I'm co-hosting along with Marco Slot. Hey, Marco.
Hey everyone! Yeah, great to be at the the first ever release party. Though we actually always, after a major release, did our internal demos between the team members of some of the big features we worked on, and so we thought, why not share it with the world?
Yeah, and usually you'll be around a table, or actually your team is distributed, so connected via Teams and sharing these demos. So we've got a few engineers who are going to be joining us today and walking us through. Marco is the technical lead for the Citus database engine, and he's been working on Citus for quite a number of years now in the Postgres space. And so he definitely knows what he's talking about. So I thought he would be the perfect person to give us a very quick overview of what we're going to be seeing today, where we can find more information about Citus 11. Well, there you go. That's the updates page.
Yeah. So if you're on citusdata.com, we now have this updates page at the updates tab at the top, and you'll find everything that's changed in every release since Citus 9.2, which was from quite a while ago already. So it's a short history of Citus. But most importantly, you'll find what's new, everything that's new in Citus 11. And there's a lot of smaller features and details, sometimes important details, but today we'll have some demos around the two really big ones, first of which is that we open sourced all of the remaining Citus Enterprise features. So there's one Citus, which is the one you find on GitHub is going to be the same as the one you find in, let's say, Azure. And that's exciting. And the other really exciting feature is that you can now query the cluster from any node. So you can query the cluster via the coordinator, but you can also connect your application to any of the worker nodes. So we'll have some demos for both of these features today.
Awesome. And then I think you wrote a blog post as well, if you want to pop that up, just for people who want to kind of, before diving into the nitty-gritty details of the release notes, this will give you a good overview and a good big picture of Citus 11 too, right?
Yeah, so if you go to the blog tab on citusdata.com, you'll find the blog post where I kind of highlight some of the things that have been open sourced, and also some of the more technical details about how querying from any node works and some of the implications. So it's a good place to start if you want to learn more about Citus 11, and then if you want to know like all the details, you can find everything there is to know in the release notes.
Now, I know we rolled all this out about a week and a half ago, and I didn't count to the minute, but I think the news about Citus 11 and the open sourcing of these final remaining enterprise features, I think it landed on the front page of Hacker News for, I don't know, 15, 16 hours, something like that.
Yeah, it was maybe a bit earlier than we intended, but we were pretty happy about it. So Jelte, who's giving the first demo, kind of got some good Hacker News karma, because as soon as he pushed the commit to GitHub that open sourced all of the remaining enterprise features, like within a few hours, it was on the front page of Hacker News, and the reactions were very positive. So Jelte, can you tell us a bit more about that?
Sure, I can. That's why I'm here.
Well, you and your cat?
Me and my cat, yes. He's sleeping right now, but apparently he doesn't mind me talking next to him. But he likes being on camera usually.
And you're joining us from the Netherlands, is that right, Jelte?
I'm joining you from the Netherlands, yes, from Amsterdam.
Awesome. And I hope people who are watching us live, we know that the Citus open source user community is global because some of you talk to us, or you're on the Citus public Slack. And but it'd be cool if people could just kind of type in where they're joining from, to just give everybody else a sense of how global this community is. And with that, yeah, Jelte, talk to us. What are you going to show us today?
All right. So I'll talk about the two main features that people should be excited about that we open source them. The first one is user management. Previously, in the open source version of Citus, we had not very great user management. You could make it work, but it required a lot of manual steps. And now it's pretty seamless. So if you on the coordinator, which is my top one, my top pane, and if I create a user there, a new one called my user with password 123, then it's created on the coordinator, as you can see here. It's there, and now it's also created on the worker automatically. So on all the workers, the user now exists. It has the same password. Everything is propagated like you would expect it to. And previously, with Citus with the open source version of Citus, you couldn't do that. Or you could, but you have to create it manually on all the workers. And when you added a new worker, you would need to add it there as well. And now when you add a new worker, automatically it gets the new user data, all the user data as well.
So it's a usability improvement.
It's a big usability improvement.
Okay.
So let's
Catch away.
try this user out. Let me connect as it, and I type my password, and now I'm my user on the coordinator. And we can create a table as this user. And then, as we do with Citus tables, usually we distribute them. So I'm going to distribute this table by tenant. It also has an ID column, but I'm going to distribute it by the tenant ID. Oh, no, it doesn't work. Of course. The reason is that still the coordinator needs to communicate with the workers, and it doesn't know the password. It doesn't know how you want it to communicate. It doesn't. In behind the scenes, it knows the password, but it doesn't know if you allow password authentication even. So to tell it that you want it to connect with the password, you have to switch back to the super user. In my case, Jelte, because I'm super. And then there's this view. There's this table that previously was also only available in Citus Enterprise, but is now also open source. Which is called pgdist_out_info. In this table, you can have connection options that should be used for specific users when connecting to specific nodes. Previously, the only way to do this was by having lots of pgpass files and like a big pgpass file with entries for all the nodes and for all the users, and you have to keep those in sync with the users that you actually had, which was a big, well, it wasn't very nice as a user experience. And this one is much nicer. In this case, you can just add one line for each user. If you use node ID 0, it means it's used for connections to all of the nodes in the cluster, not just for a specific worker, but for all of the nodes. And I mean, we say that it's for my user, and as the extra connection option, you can say what the password is. So we insert that. Now it's in here, and we can connect as my user again. The reason we needed to switch to super user is because regular users cannot access this table because, well, it contains sensitive information like passwords. So now let's try this table, distributing the table again. Now it should work. And indeed it does. Table's there. We can query it. And as you can see, it's also in Citus tables view, and indeed it's a distributed table, so it's there. So that's the better user management that we have. So now I'll focus on the other major feature that we open source, which is the non-blocking shard rebalancer.
So one of the comments on the chat is that user propagation is huge. So you're not the only one who thinks this is pretty cool.
We also propagate grants and owner alter. Well, we also some other user things like also row level security also is propagated now. Anything to do with permissions and users is propagated.
Cool.
And if it isn't, then I mean it's a bug, or we never had it in Enterprise either. It's a missing feature at least. So feel free to create an issue if you miss something that's critical for you. But almost all the common features for like user management and permission management, they now propagate.
And the place to create an issue is on the GitHub repo, right?
Yes, that's
Okay.
or you can reach out in Slack and because maybe it's there, it just doesn't work or something. I don't know. Feel free to post either in Slack or create a GitHub issue.
Cool.
So now I wanted to focus on the non-blocking shard rebalancer, which is the other major feature that's been open sourced. We already open sourced the shard rebalancer like a year ago or something. But that was a blocking shard rebalancer. It would, if you move the shard, you would not be able to write to the shard that was being moved. You could still read from it. You could still write to other shards that were not being moved, but the one that you were moving, you couldn't write to it. All the writes would be blocked, and you would have to wait. The writes would have to wait until the shard was fully moved from one node to another. And now that's not the case anymore. So first, let's add some data into a shard. We'll write into a single tenant so that it doesn't have to fill all the shards. It's great. It's going to create one big shard that we're going to move around a bit. So this will take a little bit, but not too long. And let me connect in the below pane also to the coordinator. And we can execute some queries here. You can insert some more rows and count. So as you can see, whenever I press up and enter, it will add some extra rows. And now we can check what shard we need to move. This is pretty easy with the Citus shards view. So I'm going to order by shard size because there's only one big shard, which is the one that we inserted in. So it's this one. It's 10, 20, 41. And it's currently on the node with port 9752. So let's move that shard from that worker to the other one. In this case, I'm using Citus move shard placement, which is sort of the lower level API to move shards around. Normally, you wouldn't have to use this directly. This would be called by the shard rebalancer. As soon as you add a new node, the shard rebalancer will call this function a lot of times to move shards around. But because we want to move it a bit back and forth, it's easier to use it directly.
So you're just using this in order to illustrate your point, right?
Yes,
in order to do the demo.
Most users, they wouldn't have to call this function ever manually.
Okay.
They would call the rebalance stable shards, which I'll show a bit later. So now this is automatically gonna use the non-blocking version of moving shards. So now it's gonna move a shard, and I can still, in the below pane, I can still add rows and read, and everything just continues to work. There's no indication at all that a shard is being moved, and it's done now as you can see at the top, and I can still insert. So it all worked seamlessly. There was no downtime, at least no visible one. I mean, there's like a little bit of latency hiccup at some point when we do the final switch, but you shouldn't notice that. There's no long downtime while the shard is being moved. So that was my demo. Of the non-blocking shard rebalancer. More info can be found on the docs, and like there's a cluster management page.
Are you showing us that right now?
No, I'm trying to.
Okay. Yeah, it just your screen went off. There it is. Came back.
All right. So yeah, so we have the docs. and there's a section on the rebalancer and how it rebalances shards without any downtime. And as you can see, starting in version 11.0, it's now open source and everyone can use it. And the way to use it is very simple. You just do select rebalance stable shards, and it will balance the shards in your cluster. And there's a lot more info on how this all works, and if it doesn't work for some reason, because there's some edge cases where you might have to look out for a bit. So you can read up on it here on just on the docs.citusdata.com.
Cool. Now, I know that Citus has been open source since, well, Marco, you were here, but I'm pretty sure it was back in 2016, right? That's when we first unforked and made Citus an extension to Postgres. And then the shard rebalancer was open source last year. Of these few remaining enterprise features that are now open sourced, somebody is asking on the live chat, what is your favorite feature, Hjalte?
So, I mean, both of the ones that I showed are sort of my favorite feature. The user management, it's really nice as a Citus developer, because when we had 2 repos, it was one of the things that changed, that caused tests to be slightly different on community and the enterprise edition. So there were all kinds of merge conflicts, and now we don't have to worry about that. But other than that, like the non-blocking shard rebalancer is also sort of my favorite feature, because that's one of the features I've like the shard rebalancer and a non-blocking version as well is one of the features I've over the past 2.5 years that I've been at Citus that I worked on a lot. So it's one of the features that I worked on. So it's nice that it's now open source. Yeah.
So it's like having children. You love all your children.
Yes, I love all my children equally. Yes.
So we've got another question from Sai. What is the impact of performance on the existing database while rebalancing data?
Normally it should be fairly small. We try not to push the servers that are moving data too much. But I mean, if you're already using like 100% CPU or like 100% of your disk, and then you're gonna do something else, I mean, in the end, it's gonna have some performance impact. But we try not to like take everything and make your cluster go down. We try to sort of be nice about it a bit when we move shards.
Right. And one more question, which I've heard a lot over the past 2 weeks is, why did you open source Citus?
Okay, that's a really good question. Well, I mean, it's not just because Microsoft is nice and it wants to open source everything it has, because I mean, obviously that's not completely true. But in this case, it also makes sense for Microsoft to open source this. It's a good business decision in the end, because Microsoft is selling Citus on Azure, and we want as much people to use Citus on Azure, because then they pay money to Azure, and the way that we think that that will happen is by having as many people as we can use Citus in general, on-prem or on AWS, on Google Cloud. It doesn't really matter. As long as a lot of people use Citus, a lot of people will want to use Citus on Azure, and because we think we can provide the best service for Citus, because we have we have the experts here that we're building it, so we can sort of we know what we're doing a bit. So yeah, so it's but you don't ever have to come to Azure if you don't want to. We think it would be a good choice, but I mean there's always there's trade-offs, and we're happy if you use it on-prem, as long as you want forever, doesn't matter. All that would be nice if you tell some friends that maybe they should consider Citus if you like it. But that's also that you don't have to.
I think it's fair to say that our whole team is committed to Postgres open source and Citus open source. I mean, there's a few other extensions that we also support, that are open source. We have committers on our team who spend the vast majority of their time contributing to Postgres core. So I think it's just part of the whole mindset within the team, right? That we should be giving back to the community as well as working on whatever managed service offerings that we also have.
Of course.
So,
I mean, it's not just because it makes we think it makes more money for Microsoft. It's also a bit because we're nice, but it's also not only because we're nice. It's multiple reasons in the end.
But we are pretty nice.
But we are pretty nice, yes.
well, apparently you're super, according
I'm
to
super,
your super
yes.
user joke there.
All right, so we have 3 more sort of general Citus questions. Claire, what do you want to do? Do we maybe take one and
let's take one, and then we'll jump to the next demo. So while Jelte is still with us,
all right,
Marco,
so
you get to pick.
Yeah, I'll take so what about PostGS and spatial data, which is a great question. So in general, PostGS works pretty seamlessly with Citus. So you could just use all the PostGS types in your tables, use all the functions and operators in your queries, and it'll parallelize your queries or route them to the right place. I think one thing to kind of be a little bit cautious of is if you do sort of spatial joins between 2 distributed tables, that's probably not supported. But there's still kind of, if you carefully model your data, you can, for example, use a reference table that contains shapes and then join your very large table that contains a lot of points with the table of shapes. So there's a lot of options. So we have a lot of users who use a combination of PostGS and Citus. I think probably on citusdata.com under the customer stories, you will find a few very large PostGS plus Citus workloads.
Okay, now Marco, when I said to pick one question, I thought for sure you were going to pick the column store question.
Well, we can do that. So does Citus handle a read-heavy analytical workload? So actually, like in the previous major release, Citus 10, we added columnar storage to Citus. So this is something you can just use. It's optional, but you can use it in addition to being able to distribute a table. You can just make your regular tables, columnar tables on a single server. That's also works fine. And so this helps a lot in compressing your data, reducing the amount of I/O, and speeding up particularly large scans. It's not going to be like a full replacement for like a data warehouse, like a Synapse. That's still going to be a lot faster for very large analytical queries. But especially for compressing large amounts of data and doing simpler analytical queries on it, or scenarios where you build kind of roll-ups on your raw data that's stored in columnar format, it works really, really well, especially if you combine it with partitioning. And so you'll find also some blog posts and documentations on how to set up columnar storage with Postgres partitioning, where you can have time partitions where the old partitions use columnar storage. So awesome. Yeah, thanks for the questions. But let's go to the second demo because we have another great feature. Thank you, Jelte.
Thank you, Jelte. Thank you, Jelte's cat.
And the next great feature is actually querying from any node. I mean, this has been in the works for a while. Like, it's kind of been there as a special mode of Citus with some limitations, but now it's just available to everyone. And what are you going to show us?
Hello, so it's great to be here, like in the first release party of Citus. So today I'd like to show like what do we mean by querying from any node? Sorry about this. Okay, so today I'd like to talk about what is querying from any node means from Citus perspective, and like how does it work, and what are some examples that I can show quickly. But then before getting into the details, I'd like to make a note on this. So if you're already using Citus, and if you're already using Citus, you are using your coordinator as the point of running queries against the database. As of this release, you don't have to change anything. Like, you can keep your database as it used to work. So like even a single coordinator is like, you can scale a really high number of transactions per second, or you can run like complex analytical queries which require some like some merge step on the coordinator, like where we need to like merge data from different nodes and then run final aggregation on the coordinator. So like even with a single coordinator, you can achieve very high transaction throughputs or very high rates of concurrency. But then still, like if you need to scale further, you can now use any worker node for querying and getting into higher throughput.
So I think it's worth repeating what you just said, that for those of you who are connected to a Citus coordinator and you're leveraging the distributed database features of Citus, but your connection is to the coordinator, you can just keep on doing that. And for a lot of use cases and a lot of applications, that's all you'll ever need, right? Is that what you just said?
Yes, I mean, you really don't need anything further. I mean, you can use it, but I mean, if using coordinator is simpler, you are already used to, your application is already built like with that in mind, then like, I mean, you can keep using the coordinator. I mean, you don't have to change, but if you need anything further, you can always use workers. So that's the point. So like in this demo, I'd like to go through this script, and then so the first two commands that I will run is just creating a table and then converting into a distributed table. And distributed table means like we just convert it into a sharded table across the cluster. So I will do this demo with one coordinator and two worker nodes, and I mean just some pointers. So this is the coordinator, and you can also see the coordinator here. So this is the worker. So I will switch between these screens. So I'm just giving some heads up information on that. So the first thing I will do is I will connect to the coordinator and then create a table which has a primary key integer and then data field, which is a JSON data. And then with create distributed table function, I just convert this table into a distributed table. So as soon as I converted this table to a distributed table on the coordinator, the table becomes available on the workers. So when I switch to the worker one or any worker node, and I just list all the tables, now I can see that the distributed table is also accessible from the worker node. And then I will copy one more command. So in this second command, what I will do is I will connect to one of the worker nodes and insert into the distributed table that I have just created. And in this command, I will insert the value 100 to the JSON column. So I can connect to any of the worker nodes. So I'm already connected to worker one, and oops, I didn't copy. Okay. So I copied this, and I just inserted this value, inserted the value 100 to the distributed table on the JSON column. And then I can switch to any other worker nodes. For example, now I'm connected to worker 2, which you can also see here. And when I list the tables, I can see the distributed tables, the distributed table that we created and inserted data from the worker node. And then if I select from this table, now I can see that the data is the data is also now accessible from the other worker node as well. So I created the table from the coordinator, I inserted from worker one, and then now I can query the table from worker two. So this is the essence of what querying from any node. And then how do we achieve this? So like if you are familiar with a little bit with Citus, so Citus keeps some metadata about, like, for example, which tables are distributed in the system, like what are the shards, what are the shard ranges, etc. And then how this works is that as soon as anything changes, like any table is created, any metadata change operation happens, the changes are replicated to the workers. So for example, what I can show here is that, okay, I think I don't have it. So, but what I can show is that, so I'm now connected to the worker node. So this is this is the table that Citus keeps track of the distributed tables, and then from the worker node, I can see that the table's metadata is also replicated to the worker node, so that the planner and executor can access and run queries on this table. Okay, so tables is one part of the story, but then if your application now needs to connect to the worker nodes instead of coordinator for running queries, then the other, like some other objects are also needed. For example, what if you have a view on the distributed tables? So you want that view to be also available on the workers. Or what about if you have a function that you use inside your queries? So now that you can also query from the worker nodes, that function should be available on the workers as well. So, and as of Citus 11, so as soon as you create a view, for example, so this is a view that is created on the distributed table that we just created in this demo. For example, this view simply just sums all the values in the table, and like a simple view on a distributed table. Or for example, a trivial function which just gets an integer value, a big integer value, and then just doubles it and returns it. So like there are two, this is a simple function and this is a simple view. But as soon as okay, let me copy these two. As soon as I create these objects on the coordinator, they become available on the workers. For example, if I list the tables, now I can see that the view that I have just created is available on the worker. And also, for example, I can query this view easily from the worker nodes. So this is the view, and then I can also like see that the definition of the view is the same as we created on the coordinator. And similarly, the function that we have just created is also available on the worker. And like if your application uses this function, then now you can also use this function from the workers. And then there is actually one more thing that is probably interesting to talk about. So at Citus, we always talk about three different table types. So the first one is the distributed table, which we discussed. So like you call a create distributed table function, which converts this table into a distributed table with multiple shards across the cluster. The second one is a reference table, which is a table type that is replicated to all nodes. And the third type that we also discuss on our documentations is the local tables on the coordinator. So for example, like if the table is too small that doesn't need to be distributed, or it's only used for administrative purposes that are not, for example, joined with distributed tables. So you might want to keep those tables as local tables on the coordinator. But then with the querying from any node architecture, so how are you going to access those tables? And in this next step, I will show those. So for example, with these two commands, I will just be creating a local table, like just a regular Postgres table, and insert one row into the table on the coordinator. So I will connect here, and then I just created a table and then inserted one row. And then, so like if you use the coordinator, the table is available on the coordinator. So the Citus planner and executor is smart enough, for example, to distribute a local table with a distributed table. Because the table is accessible on the coordinator, then we can plan and execute this query. But then now I switch to the worker node, and if I now try to join a local table with a distributed table, now it will complain that this table does not exist, because we did nothing to make this table available from the workers for querying. So to help like our users to access these tables as well, so we added one more UDF, which is Citus add local table to metadata. So it means that when you call this function on a local table on the coordinator, Citus will add this function to its own metadata. And as I also mentioned earlier, so as soon as something is added to the metadata on the coordinator, it's also replicated to the worker nodes. So now if I go back to the coordinator and then add this local table to the metadata of Citus, now that if I list the tables, I can see the local table is also accessible from the worker nodes, and then now I can run the query that I wasn't able to run before, but it's like a join between a local table and distributed table, and I can do it from the worker nodes as well. But then the data still is hold on the coordinator for this local table, but then it can be accessed from the worker nodes. And then I also want to briefly show you the documentation. So if you I mean, there are lots of things to consider when you consider querying from any node. And if you go to the updates page on the citusdata.com, and if you click on the updates page that Marco also briefly mentioned, and if you click on query from any node, then it will walk you through some other aspects of querying from any node as well. For example, this is about connection management. So now that the worker nodes can also connect to each other, then there are certain settings that can help you to scale even higher number of throughput. So these type of details can be found in the updates page. And I think that's all I have.
Awesome. Thank you.
Meeting.
Thank you so much. There was a question, and then there's a bunch of chat around it already, but I also wanted to get your take. So is Citus now a multi-master DB that competes with BDR, bidirectional replication?
I think, so Marco, do you want to answer this one, or do you want?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So I think what we're doing with Citus is mostly sharding, so dividing the data over many machines. And so the querying from any node is now you can access the cluster from any machine, and your insert will get routed to the right shard, which might be on a different machine. With BDR, it's replication. So every server has the same copy of the data, so it's still limited to a single server. But then you can, let's say you have 3 servers, you can insert anywhere, and that insert will show up somewhere else. That's not a feature we currently have in Citus, but with Citus you can just scale to very large sizes and very high throughputs. All right, another question that came up is are there any SQL limitations while querying from the worker nodes?
I think that's also a good question. So in terms of insert, select, update, delete, and even truncate, so there are really no difference between querying from the coordinator or from the workers. But the only limitation comes with DDL commands. So such as creating a table or altering a table or creating a view that we also walked you through. So those commands, the DDL commands, they still should go through the coordinator. But others, there's no difference.
Thanks. All right, I see Ozan joined the screen. So
hey.
Ozan is also going to show us something about querying from any node, because what happens if your client connects to some random node and does a query there and some other node, and maybe you want to know from that other node what's going on in my cluster. So Ozan has implemented some great features for seeing that. So let's have a look at your demo.
And thank you for joining us, Ozan. And Ander, I didn't get a chance to say thanks before you left the screen, but yeah, really appreciated your demo. Okay, let's go.
Hello. So now we can query our cluster from any node. We of course had to give a way to monitor from any node, and we added some new features in Citus 11 to do that. So let me just dive right in. The first thing we added is a new value associated with queries, similar to Postgres's process ID, but this one is unique across a Citus cluster. So it is unique, but every distributed query and like its parts that work on the shards share the same global PID. Oh, I forget to say the name of it. Its name is global PID. We call it global process ID, or GPID for short. To find the global PID of your current backend, you can use our new function called Citus backend GPID. So we try to make this human readable. So it consists of the node ID of your current node and the process ID, the Postgres process ID of this current backend. Let me show that too. See. So if you want to, like if I run a query on this node right now, I can use the global PID to like view some information about it from any other node. So I just created a distributed table. I will run an update query on it. So now if I go to any other node on my cluster, I can use the Citus dist stat activity view with my global PID to get some information about it. So this view actually has all of the columns PG stat activity has, but right now I'm showing only the relevant ones, and we added some more columns. But this view only shows the original initiator distributed queries. But if you want to get information about all of the queries, you can use the Citus stat activity view. So let me make it a bit wider. So here you can find information about both the original query and the queries that run on the shards. And the extra columns we added are, there are 3 of them. One is global PID that I've been just explaining. And the second one is node ID. This is the node that this row of data comes from. And the last one is worker query. This is a Boolean value that shows if this query is one of those that run on the shards, or is it the original query. So let me show you how to use this. Let's create some problem by running another query that will be blocked on the first one that I run on this node. So I'm going to run a delete query. Oh. I think I forgot to do something. Let me run another query.
It's 6.
Oh, okay. I think I deleted it before while trying for the demo. Okay, so if I just, I can use the Citus lock weights table to see which queries in my cluster are waiting for a lock on another query. So 1 second. Okay. So in this view, you can find the query names of the queries that are waiting for each other and the global PIDs. You can use these global PIDs with the views I just showed to get like some more information about that. And later, let's say if you decide you want to cancel this query, you can use Postgres's PG cancel backend function to do that. Ta-da, I just canceled a query from another node. And similarly, you can use Postgres's PG terminate backend too. And this will just terminate this backend. And yeah, that is pretty much it for my demo. You can find more examples on our update page.
Awesome. Yeah, Marco, maybe pop up your screen again for a second. Ozan, thank you so much. I think we're almost out of time. And so we're going to have to wrap up, and you're not going to be able to get any questions. But for those of you who are attending live, if you have questions, drop them into the chat, or you can always join our Citus public Slack. You can get to that link in the footer of our webpage. Yeah, Marco's showing the Citus open source project website. There's more info there.
so here at the top, above this beautiful alicorn, you can find the updates page with the release notes, the blog where you find the blog posts about Citus 11 and some of our contributions to Postgres, for example. And also, you can always go to our GitHub page to find out everything that we're developing. If you have an issue, please help us by reporting it on the issues page. If you like Citus, please start on GitHub. And finally, it's been shown a few times, but like docs.citusdata.com has very detailed information about all Citus features, about use case guides, and dealing with things like time series and partitioning and columnar and everything you might want to know about Citus.
Awesome. Is Andre coming back too, so we can say thank you properly? Yeah, Marco, thanks for co-hosting this, and for all of you who joined with demos, and for all of you who joined on the live stream with questions. This is recorded, obviously. It's going to be available on YouTube, and hopefully people will find it useful. Let us know if you want us to do this again for the next release of Citus. Yeah, thank you to Yelta's cat too. We appreciate your feedback and your questions. So, and Teresa Giacomini, you organized and produced this, so you're in the backstage. But yes, we thank you as well. I think we have a final screen to pop up before we get cut off with just a bunch of useful links. And that's it. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Bye. See you next time.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye.
Bye.